There we are. All right, well, hello everyone. My name is Daniel Fairley. I'm a Youth Opportunity Coordinator focused on Black male achievement for the city of Charlottesville. And I'm here to be your host for the evening at the the Charlottesville City Schools School Board Candidate Virtual Forum. So I'm just gonna give you kind of like a rundown for what we're gonna do today. I'll do introductions, basically reading out everyone's candidate bio. Afterwards, we're gonna have a Q&A period in which basically every candidate will get 2 minutes to answer each question. After 2 to 5 minutes, we may have open discussion if needed, with a total of 10 to 15 minutes per discussion. And then closing statements by each candidate will be limited to 2 minutes, and that will happen at the very end. And then there'll be wrap up and closing from myself at the very end as well. If you can hear that shaking, that's my dog, so I apologize. So first we have, in no particular order, potentially, these may be in, oh baby, we're on Facebook Live, okay, we gotta be quiet. So to start off with our candidates, we have Krista Bennett. Krista is a parent of 2 children who have attended Charlottesville City Schools since 2013. She is a chief operating officer of Strive for College, a national organization that helps students to find their best paths to a living wage careers, and recently served as the director of a playground for a walker. She has a master's degree in international relations with a focus on human rights advocacy. Next, we have Emily Dooley. Emily Dooley worked in education for 10 years before transitioning into a career in real estate. She chairs Blue Ridge Homebuilders Workforce Development Committee, which works to connect local students with employers through internships and scholarships. Emily is committed to using her experience and depth of understanding of education to ground policy decisions in the daily reality of schools. Next, we have Lisa Larson Torres. Lisa Larson Torres has lived in Charlottesville since 1999. She is a healthcare provider in our community. Her daughter graduated from Charlottesville High School in 2020, and Lisa is a current chair of the Charlottesville City School Board and was first elected to the school board in 2017. Next, we have Dom Morse. Dom is an experienced educator, innovator, and was named the 2020 Charlottesville Business Innovation Council's, or CBIC, Educator of the Year. As a Charlottesville High School GED graduate, Dom understands the challenges students face in the classroom and what it feels like to not have any choice in learning. Today, he works diligently in the classroom every day as the youth entrepreneurship facilitator to help students explore and solve problems and find their own voice to become the next generation of leaders. And our last candidate is Leah Purrier. Leah serves as the Charlottesville City School, has served on the Charlottesville City School Board since 2006. During this time, Leah has served as chair and vice chair of the board. In addition, she has been a member, chair, and vice chair of the K-Tech board and the board of the Piedmont Regional Education Program. She is currently serving as vice chair for them. She has also represented the Charlottesville City School Board as a member of the Council of Urban Board Educators Steering Committee, as well as the National School Boards Association. So welcome to you all. All right, so for us to get started, we will go in the same order that I read you all out. So we will have Krista, Emily, Lisa, Dom, and then Leah. And then what we can do from that point is kind of serpentine back. So then that way, Leah, you would answer twice, and then we come back up that way. Does that work for everyone? Fantastic. So the first question is focused on equity. And so again, I will be asking Krista this question first. What steps can the school board take to ensure CCS's commitment to equity is realized? How would you like to see successes measured? How would you like to address the educational debts owed to students of color in our community? And how would you like equity and support equity for the LGBTQIA+ students? So it's a very long and
those are a few questions, I think. I'm really glad that you framed it in terms of education debt instead of achievement gap. That's how I like to think about the difference in academic outcomes that you see along racial lines. It's not that students have failed to achieve, but rather that we adults and our school systems have failed to give them what they need to learn. And that's on us. And it is something that we need to take seriously. This idea was kind of popularized by Gloria Ladson-Billings. She's somebody, a scholar and an educator that I think very highly of. And in thinking about how we can repay that debt and break systemic racism and plus biases that have often caused that debt, I am committed to listening to our community because I think it's important to check in with people of color and how they view equity and what we can do to get there. So every bi-weekly, and even more often, I'll do it weekly if the demand is there. I'm going to hold listening sessions. Half the time it will be, I will be in a central location downtown and folks can come to me, anybody in the community, a parent, student, teacher, and talk to me about what's going on in our schools. And then the other half of the time, I want to be partnering with community organizations to go into our community so that I can listen and I will listen to what challenges are happening, and then I will work with whoever I have to work with to find solutions to those. And I hope that that will be a first step in a process of including more people in defining what equity means in our school system. So that's to address your question about how we'll know when we get there. I think that's going to be a conversation. And I've already started this in the past few months, talking with Black and Latinx leaders at direct service organizations and at UVA. And one thing that I've heard mentioned several times is a focus on preschool is needed to close that education debt. And so focusing on preschool is one of my priorities, as is preparing students to graduate prepared for college and career opportunities. And those are really related. If you wait to high school to try to make those changes, we waited too late to make the change we want to see.
Thank you. And thank you for sticking within the time as well. Next, we will have Emily.
Sure, thank you. So as a school system, I think that we need to reduce our focus on high stakes testing that's in and of itself rooted in racial inequities, and instead focus our resources on ensuring that all students have access to high level instruction that promotes problem solving, critical thinking, and real world connections. As a member of the school board, I would support division staff, administrators, teachers, and students in taking the leap of faith that test scores will naturally follow if we engage students in this rigorous type of work. And it's important to note that it's not that we're not assessing students and measuring growth, but we're assessing their critical thinking and their analytical skills instead of the rote regurgitation of facts that, quite frankly, anyone with a smartphone in their pocket can easily find. On the board, I would support the work that's already been started by teachers of creating, implementing, and revising inquiry design model and project-based learning opportunities, which allow students to engage in relevant types of questions that are real-world touch points for students. And I think that these can address topics that are important to our community and highlight historically marginalized communities and students who are all along the spectrum of sexual identity. I think we need to also continue the support of our efforts to expand access to preschool and early interventions for learning opportunities for our youngest learners. I have been a testing coordinator in a high school. I've been the principal of a primary school, and I can tell you that our current setup of testing students all of the time, even our youngest learners, it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand why we think that taking time away from instruction to focus on testing is going to result in good outcomes. So I believe that through the combination of all of these efforts that focus on providing students with exceptional learning will result in the measurable growth that we're after.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Lisa.
Daniel, I was wondering if you could repeat the question, please.
There we are. I've been on Zoom before. Okay, so the question is, what steps can the school board take to ensure that CCS's commitment to equity is realized? How would you like to see success measured? And how would you address the education debts owed to the student of color in our community? Also, last part of the question, how would you support equity for the LGBTQIA+ students?
Thank you. First off, that's a big question, and that encompasses a lot. And that's what is a prime example of what we on the school board work to do every single day. For me personally, the idea of equity and started about 12 years ago with my child and my advocacy for her, and realizing that she wasn't getting what she needed to be successful. I think it's important that, and we have done the work as a school division to define what equity is. We have a very strong equity policy. I was, and we as a board were part of that. For me, equity means that every student receives what they need to develop to their full academic potential. And I believe that every learner can be a high achiever, and every student should get equitable opportunities. So through every single decision that we as a board make, our conversations, the policies that we've passed, equity is always at the forefront. We have a wonderful equity committee. One of the things that we did on the board that I was part of was hiring our first supervisor of equity and inclusion. And through the work and being on that committee for the last couple of years, we've done some excellent work speaking specifically to how we're going to measure that and the outcomes for that. We have the committee this last year worked really hard to set up a rubric, and that's soon to be rolled out. So I'm looking forward to receiving that report from Denise Johnson, and through a school board meeting, and we are dedicated to serving the needs of every single student. And I will continue to do that. And every decision I've made has been student focused.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Dom.
With reconfiguration, a new superintendent, post-COVID lockdown, and at least one new school board member, we have a great opportunity to address equity within our school system and really start to thinking about new models of instruction, so that we have a level of engagement for our students with equity built into the model, with social emotional learning built in the model. And that is what I'm working on, and that is what I'm looking forward to doing on the school board. That looks like supporting our teachers to help them design the curriculum that allows our students to explore their own interests, to explore their identity, and to use those traits to tie in with their learning, their academic standards that we're teaching in the classroom. For me, I will continue to work on that. And that's what I do every day as an educator, to make sure that we have that for our entire school system. That looks like our students solving problems within our community while they're in our schools. And that's what I really look forward to doing, allowing our students to explore who they are, addressing some of our reading and our achievement gaps, are working with community partners and strengthening our ties and our communication with our parents, focusing on the households that need extra support. That's what we can do as a community, and that's what I look forward to.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Purrier.
Good evening. Equity is the right thing to do, but above and beyond equity, we must have inclusion. And the development of our 3-year-old program in the Commonwealth of Virginia was one of our first steps towards equity and inclusion. Working with preschoolers to have the vocabulary and other skills that many students in the Commonwealth have on a regular basis. We have developed our 4-point equity policy. We have a diversity and equity department, both of which I have worked on in order to develop. Our anti-bullying policy addresses our LGBTQIA population, both with our students and with our staff. And all of the members of those communities are included in what we do. They don't just sit at the table, they have a voice at the table. We have developed a rigorous and robust and unlevel classes in the high school, which is allowing students to be in every class and have an opportunity to participate in those rigorous classes. We have also worked to realign our talented and gifted program so that all children participate in the gifted portion of the talented and gifted, because we all have gifts and we all have an opportunity to shine. I work with students every day from low socioeconomic backgrounds, and it is my job to place them into college. They must graduate from high school on time, and they go on to post-secondary education. And that does not always indicate 4 years. It could be 2, it could be specialized education, or it could be the real world of work. And I will continue as a member of the school board to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are on to our next question, which is COVID. Give me 1 second.
He has something to say about equity. Maybe we should hear him out.
Okay, so what has the COVID pandemic taught you about the challenges of leadership and decision-making in the setting of insufficient knowledge? What innovations worked and what should stay? How do we make decisions when there is conflicting information? So I can ask that question again. What has the COVID pandemic taught you about challenges of leadership and decision-making in the setting of insufficient knowledge? What innovations worked and should stay? How do we make decisions when there is conflicting information? And I will start us back off with Ms. Purrier.
Well, what COVID has taught us is that all education does not take place in the classroom. I'm extremely proud of the Charlottesville City School Division, of our students, of our parents, and of our staff. We all pivoted when schools closed. We provided technology to all of our students and their families and our instructors in order that we had a high level of academic success. And you can see that with our graduation rates and how well our students did. Yes, some students did better than others, but our staff worked diligently to meet our children where they were. And because they did, they were able to receive the rigor and robust education, although some of it was face-to-face, some of it may have been on Zoom or other platforms, but it allowed us as educators to think outside the box, to do creative and innovative things, to allow each person to shine and show what their individual strengths were. It also allowed us to see where the gaps were, what we needed to do over and above providing technology and other things of that nature. I think COVID has allowed us to see that education is very broad and that we all, regardless of race or zip code or education, play a part in our child's lives and making them be the best individuals that they can be.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Dom.
When it comes to leadership and the lessons that we learned in COVID, I think the most important is not really a lesson that we learned, but really a reminder that we need to work together as a community to solve our issues, whether it's as drastic as a pandemic and as sudden as a pandemic, or some of the issues that we've been dealing with for decades in this city, such as equity, such as learning gaps. And I think it's just amazing. It's just amazing how our community has been able to evolve during the pandemic. But one of the things that is just a key reminder for me is the relationships that we form with students. That is what helps our students get through this period, whether it's during virtual school or even right now during the transition back to school. We have to continue to create those relationships with our students. And then another thing, we need to start thinking about the engagement level of our curriculum. I can tell you from my personal experience last year doing virtual school, I completed 20 projects for a group of middle schoolers. And it was just a fantastic experience to keep them engaged with their learning in their studies. And that, I think, is the key moment that we need to start thinking about of how we continue to engage our students, because virtual school was not the beginning of lack of engagement for our students. It was just a way for our parents to also realize that and to become part of that conversation. So for us in COVID, we need to learn different ways to engage our students and continue that practice and really be reminded of the power and the strength of our teachers to pivot so quickly. And now if we give them the appropriate support to think about new models of instruction, just imagine what they can do.
Thank you very much. And before I go on to Lisa, I will repeat the question. So what has the COVID pandemic taught you about the challenges of leadership and decision-making in the setting of insufficient knowledge? What innovations worked and should stay? How do you make a decision when there is conflicting information?
Thank you. And that's a great question. And, you know, as was stated earlier, this last year, I've been chair of the school board and in a position, in a unique position to sit on some of the committees, but really establishing and affirming relationships and the importance of communication, receiving communication from students, from family members, from staff, in a time when there was a lot of transition going on within our division, a long tenured superintendent retiring, an interim superintendent coming in, and then as chair taking the lead with the board to reach out and successfully get a new superintendent. There were a lot of unknowns with COVID, let me tell you, and being chair, you know, we all receive emails and concerns, but being on the COVID committee, being a healthcare provider, I think I brought a unique perspective and an ability to participate with the committee. I think a key piece of that committee in that first summer was bringing teachers to the table, including them in the process, getting their feedback and input of what they needed and what we wanted to ensure was in the buildings to make it safer when there was a return to school. Some of the things that I think this highlighted for me was the importance of technology. And we did a great job of making sure that technology and Chromebooks were in each student's possession, making sure there were hotspots, partnering with internet providers and going into communities where Wi-Fi was not set up and making sure that they could access. So things that I think have worked and we need to continue with are some of the Zoom and the communications that has allowed and allotted families to show up and participate. Thank you. Not enough time. That's a good question.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Emily.
Sure. So I think, you know, for as difficult as COVID and the pandemic has been, there certainly have been some silver linings. You know, as others have stated, the expansion of connectivity and technology in the division is definitely a highlight. And also the community coming together. You know, you could see community members rallying at parks and on school buses, delivering meals and work to students to complete, participating in vaccination drives, which hopefully we will start up again here in a few weeks as our younger students will become eligible. I think it's also highlighted the need for communication and in conflicting information, really relying on the experts that we're really fortunate in Charlottesville to have in our backyard. The physicians and epidemiologists and supports from UVA have been instrumental in helping our community respond to this crisis. Another silver lining that I think is really important is the opportunity to get outside. We're seeing teachers and school staff be really creative in their response and ability to get students back into school safely. It's been really fun to see photos of trucks delivering picnic tables to schools and yoga mats being carried outside. And now the challenge is to expand on this type of service for students, and to remember that getting outside shouldn't be discounted as play and considered separate from academics, but learning can occur in these spaces as well. But the time for leadership in responding to the pandemic isn't over. I'm deeply concerned about the increased demands and stress that's placed on teachers and staff as we continue to respond. Teachers are carrying a tremendous weight as they work to keep students safe back in the building. And I'm interested in exploring some of what other neighboring districts have done in really providing teachers what they need right now, which is more time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Krista.
Great. I'd like to tackle first the last part of that question. What do we do when we have conflicting information? Because that has happened a lot during this pandemic. At first, masks were not going to help us, and now we know masks very much do help us. And that has happened in all different areas of the pandemic. I think it's important to have ongoing conversations with the principals and the teachers in our buildings to know what they need, what they needed and their students needed last month might not be what they need this month. So we got to have that communication. I don't think that we should talk about COVID without talking about learning loss. And I want to caveat that I deeply believe that the most important thing during this pandemic is that we do everything we can to help our students get out of it safely and that their social and emotional needs are met. And there are things that they would have learned that they didn't. And that's nobody's fault. That's just a result of the traumatic experience that we're still going through. So this is so important to me that I had my campaign took on a research associate from the Curry and Batten School to help me look at what other districts across the US, what are they doing and what are they finding is effective. And one of the most effective tools that has emerged in research is high dosage tutoring. So this is a teacher or a paraprofessional working one-to-one with students or with a small group of students, no more than 4, for 30 to 60 minutes per session, several times a week. And it has been found that this high dosage tutoring is 20 times more effective than once a week mentoring in improving math skills and 15 times more effective in improving reading skills. So I think that it's really important that, that we look at these different options. And I think that could be a good one. There's actually a briefing just written by Professor Schuler at the Curry School, also written by some folks at the Annenberg. And this isn't just numbers, these are real students' lives that we're seeing this be effective in. It's working in Boston and Chicago and Minnesota. So I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can so that our students aren't missing some of the building blocks for their education.
Thank you very much. And I'll be coming back to you at the end of this question. So this is a question around staffing issues. What is your plan to address the ongoing and worsening substitute shortage as well as bus driver shortage? Is it the responsibility of the school board to take decisive action to relieve these stressors on our teachers? And if so, what is a detailed plan for your solution?
Yeah, so the good news, bad news here is that we are not the only school district dealing with this in the US. There are 345,000 unfilled positions in K-12 education in the US. And the pandemic didn't create this, certainly has exacerbated it, but I've been sitting in school board meetings and PTO meetings for a few years talking about the need for more staff. Again, I'd like for us to look at what is working in other places. As I was thinking about how we're going to solve this sub shortage, I found a fellowship that is run in Rhode Island. It's a Central Falls Teaching Fellowship. And they, this is for substitute teachers, and it's a year-long program. They pay them well. They pay them as a long-term sub because they're committed to working for a year in one school building in the community. They make about what long-term subs in Charlottesville make, which is double what short-term subs make, and they receive regular professional development. This program has had success. 80% of the subs remain through the year. And then this district has a ready applicant pool that they vetted, that has close ties to the community. So when they're ready to hire a full-time position. So I think that's one thing that we can be looking at. Another thing I'd say is that when you are reading about staff shortages, of course, you hear about the low compensation. I think teachers should just have all the money. So that's my personal perspective. But you hear about them not being paid enough. Of course, there are health concerns with COVID, but there's also the fact that teachers don't feel respected and valued. And I am really excited about the leadership of Dr. Gurley so far. During our last school board meeting, he wrote down, or he said a quote, and I actually wrote it down so I could get it right, but he said that he wanted to create an environment where teachers feel like they can ask your questions without fear of being retaliated against. This is a kind of environment that will keep teachers around. So I think that it's really important. One other thing I'm going to try to sneak in before my time ends is that Virginia is the last in the nation for teacher pay when compared to our average state income. 50th in the US. So this is a real problem. I'm going to be doing everything I can to support teachers in their pay.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Emily.
Sure. So I'm very intrigued by the idea of hiring substitute teachers as full-time staff that are paid and provided with benefits to be on staff in buildings. They get to know students, they get to know the schools, and they're on hand to be able to fill in when teachers need to be out. This is a huge problem right now. Teachers are covering during their planning periods, they're covering during lunch, and this level of work is just not sustainable. To talk a little bit more about bus drivers, I'm really intrigued by the pilot program that's being run right now, where bus drivers are being provided with full-time benefits. I think that is, an interesting pilot program to see how it plays out, but we have got to solve this transportation problem. I recognize the limitations that COVID has placed on how many students can be on the bus, but we have to reduce any barriers, eliminate any barriers of actually getting kids to our schools. And I think the school board needs to continue to work in collaboration with the city to expand public transit options for our secondary students, to have additional routes to get them to and from school, to alleviate pressure on buses, and also to work to increase the walkability and bikeability of our schools. Again, to reduce pressure on buses and need for bus drivers, and also to fulfill some of our environmental commitments. But this is not only an issue for substitutes and bus drivers. I'm also concerned about shortages in our teaching staff as well. And I'm excited about the opportunity potentially with the public sector collective bargaining to actually collaborate with teachers in contracts to creatively approach the common pinch points like planning time, duties, pay, and benefits. As a teacher, I always used to joke about the line in contracts that's in other duties as assigned, because it's just this huge all-encompassing phrase. So again, these are all shortages throughout the system. Our people are so important to us, and we need to work together to fill these vacancies.
Thank you very much. And I will go to Lisa and repeat the question. So what is your plan to address the ongoing / worsening substitute shortage as well as bus driver shortage? Is it the responsibility of the school board to take decisive action to relieve these stressors on our teachers? And if so, what is your detailed plan for a solution?
Thank you. And thank you for including the questions there in the chat box. That helps as well. So yeah, staffing issues, this is real. This is serious. We're feeling it. What we have heard, is that this is the hardest year ever. I've heard that from so many teachers already this year. And I also heard from somebody that we are only on day 34 of this academic year. And that just blew my mind yesterday, because it feels like we're a lot further into this year. As far as, is it the responsibility of the school board to take decisive action? I think we take decisive action, and you see that in our budgeting priorities. And we, as a school board, do prioritize teacher and staff salary and have done that to the best of our ability and to the best of the budget the last 3 out of the 4 years, most recently with a 5% increase to teacher pay. As far as the subs, again, this is a concern. We are actively, and we have put in place some structure to compensate them when they are covering above contract hours. Is that sustainable? As Emily said, no, it's not. And I need people to know that we do hear and we do see and we do value each and every one of you in the building. We know that this, so shortage plus COVID is just incredible. I mean, so that's just so much for any one of us to handle. But we are creatively working with the superintendent. He's sitting down with HR and they are looking at what they can do as far as subs. I reached out to the city last spring to try and start communication regarding the bus driver situation. So that is a huge priority. It's been on our radar. Those are some of the things in my leadership that I've been able to do. But we value each and every one of you, and we will do whatever we can to support you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom?
Whew, staffing. I tell you, it is, it's really the heart of our schools. And we really have to start thinking about how we continue to not just address the shortages, but also retain the staff members that we have. In regards to short-term subs, it's a hard position in our current model, the way that we have it, where we have people that, sometimes they come in for a week straight, and then sometimes they're not used outside of a COVID era like we are in now. But I think what Krista and Emily have said previously in terms of having full-time subs and providing those benefits is crucial to make sure that we have instructors within our classrooms for our students. For our bus drivers, it's again a hard position. It's a position unlike any other. With a person with a similar credential in terms of their license, we don't ask them to also monitor students, right? So we have to think about ways that we provide development for them so that it's an easier position, but also think about how do we complete their day? So we have bus drivers that drop our kids off in the morning. Can we find ways to tie them into our school district even farther, whether there's instructional assistants, maybe they work in the cafeteria as well. And then towards the end of the day, they send our kids home safely. So those are some of the things that I would like to do as a school board member, should try to solve some of these issues in terms of the shortages. But ultimately, we have to listen, learn, and act from our staff members and really take the approach that we don't know everything because we're human, but it is our job to know as much as we can so we can help our staff members and have decisive action.
Thank you very much. Ms. Spurrier?
First of all, I'd like everyone to know that while I've been on the school board, we have worked diligently every year to increase the salaries for our teachers and keep their benefits affordable, because that is extremely important. We're one of the few school divisions where most of, if not in fact, all of our part-time employees do receive benefits. Over the last year, we have worked to increase salaries for our frontline workers, our custodial staff, those persons working in the cafeteria, and all of the people that help our building work in addition to the teachers. Garland Williams is working diligently to increase the number of bus drivers that we have in this COVID situation. I think we all need to rethink what public transportation means and how we can utilize public transportation. I'm a product of a public school division here in the Commonwealth. We use school buses for elementary schools, and we used our public transportation for our junior high and high schools. And there were some routes that did have school buses. And Mr. Williams is looking at every option possible. And I think we all need to get on board with Dr. Gurley and rethink substitute teachers. Yes, we have increased salaries for substitutes, but we need to rethink the criteria of our substitute teaching staff in order to have more substitute teachers, help out those persons that are currently teaching and giving up gracefully of their time to help us during this pandemic issue, which has brought about our shortages. And I feel that Charlottesville will rise to the occasion as we always do, and we will see results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question is going to focus on teacher support. So what will you do to ensure that CCS is fully supporting all teachers and staff? What is your plan for teacher retention? So very nice, short, and to the point. I'll put this in the chat. And when you are ready, Ms. Purrier, you may go.
Teacher support is extremely important. We've worked over the past several years as it relates to diversity and bringing in a diverse workforce. And now we must work to retain them. We must continue our professional development for retention. We must look at the abilities of those of us that work within the division and do what many people phrase as growing your own. We have an extremely talented instructional pool in CCS. We have brought them from other divisions. We have brought them out of college. They have even been our African-American teaching fellows. They're here, they like it here. And why do they like CCS? Because we're focused, we have small classes, and the instructors have an opportunity not only to get to know their students, but to know their parents as well. And so we must continue working with Denise Johnson and our HR department, particularly Mrs. Clemens Nazir, to do the types of things for professional development so that we will all learn and that we will all retain and we will continue to move forward. Thank you.
Thank
As
you.
an educator myself, that has spoken to many educators within the city of Charlottesville and the surrounding counties, I know that this is a tough job. Regardless of COVID, it's just a tough job that quite often teachers, as they start out, don't make it to year 3, and the drop off is even greater after year 5. Before year 5. My plan to retain our teachers is to make sure that we support them through the budget, through professional development. But really the thing that has continued to bring its head around as I talk to people throughout the community is to be listened to. Quite often, people don't leave organizations, but they leave leaders. They leave leaders that don't recognize and reward them. We have had so many educators that have left to go to other school districts. We have had educators leave to start their own schools because they felt like they had pushback when they wanted to innovate within our school system. So for me, it's to make sure that we are supportive as a school board, but also that we are supportive in the entirety of our school district, including central administration, and to making sure that we work with our superintendent and central administration staff and HR, that teachers can be heard, right? And not every suggestion will be acted on, but what we can do is listen to them and then point them in the right direction with their peers so that they can come to a collaborative agreement and suggest that to the school board, suggest that to the school administrators. And that will breed an environment that teachers are willing to stay for. Our teachers are willing to thrive in. And that's my plan.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Lisa. And
Okay.
for Lisa, what will you do to ensure that the CCS is fully supporting all teachers and staff? What is your plan for teacher retention?
Great question. And we've heard a lot of great ideas. Again, recognition and acknowledgement that this has been a really, really hard 35 days, I guess, as of today. Acknowledging the work that you're putting in, making sure that they feel seen and that they're heard. And I think I've done a great job of that while I've been on the board, while I've been chair this last year. I feel very strongly and I'm excited about Dr. Gurley as a new superintendent. And as I said in the last board meeting, I think it's our job to support him, to make sure that he feels supported, that he is supporting the administration, the building leadership, and the teachers, trusting that that relationship, again, relationships are key, feeling heard, bringing them to the table. And that is what I think will definitely help. Making sure that their voices are heard. I think we saw a great example again with the COVID committee. I'll go back to that, bringing the teachers to that committee and listening to them because they're boots on the ground, so to speak. They know what's going on in those buildings. So that can help as far as that. Also making sure that we are hearing their needs as far as social, emotional, mental health, and wellness. I think that's huge. All the time, but especially now. I think someone else said, I think what's important and what they need right now is time. Ensuring that we are looking at the programs that are being implemented within the division and that it doesn't equate to more, that we are auditing and figuring out what's working, what do our students need, and supporting the teachers so that they can meet the kids where they are, and again, allowing them the time to do that.
Thank you. Next, we will have Emily.
Sure. So I think, so much of this for me comes to really treating teachers as the professionals that they are, honoring their work, and not making them feel like they have to be a martyr to their job. And so I think, again, going back to, the possibility of collective bargaining and having teachers really have a voice in their contracts and their duties is going to be a really fantastic step for our community. And we have the opportunity to really lead our state in how that is carried out. I think bringing these conversations into daylight may finally allow the public to see just how hard teachers work and all the responsibilities that they carry. And I think ultimately that, having better conditions and relationships with teachers will only enhance and improve the student experience and student outcomes. Teachers being given superficial involvement or being brought in to conversations late in the game has been an ongoing issue, with teachers being pitted against parents or the community, which isn't helpful to anyone. And I think this can be alleviated by having really honest, collaborative discussions early in policymaking conversations. We've got some issues to solve and address. Benefits are only of value if you can use them. And so right now teachers are spread so thin, and we need to help them. Again, I keep going back to time. Teachers need time. And I think we need the community's help with this too, to really, lift up our teachers and make a culture where being able to serve as a teacher in our community is a privilege and something that we aspire to do.
Thank you very much. And Krista?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this. Going back to my desire to hold listening sessions for, again, it's not just students or parents that can come and talk to me, but teachers can as well. I'm excited because I think that Dr. Gurley said is wanting to create an environment where that's the norm, that teachers are part of the communication and talking about our schools and talking about what we need for our schools. I know that this is part of this 100-day plan that he put out, is listening to teachers and taking their needs seriously. So I want to support him in that. I also think that some of the ARPA funding, and I think we might get to that later in the session too, but this is money that's specific for pandemic needs. And I think that should be going to meet our teachers' needs as well. They are we all are tired, and I'll speak for myself. Some days I'm scared about sending my kids to school, or I'm scared about the teachers in my class. We're all feeling that emotional weight. And I know it's even more for teachers. And so I think that we can put some of that funding towards caring for them and making sure that they have the supports they need. I am part of SHAB, the School Health Advisory Board. I've been a part since 2017. We talk about things and pass some policies around everything from recess to nutrition to mental health and social and emotional well-being, and not just for students, but also for teachers. Our next meeting is going to be covering mental health, and that's something that we'll be talking about, not just how we can help students, but how we can help teachers. And we also include things like there's a program that offers rewards to teachers who are biking to work. Those kind of things that can be fun and encouraging teachers to be able to move their bodies during the day. That's something that's important to all of us, helps us learn and helps us feel our best during the day. So those are a few things I'm going to be looking at to support teachers. I too very strongly support collective bargaining, and I'm really glad that that's a tool that our teachers now have in Virginia to advocate for themselves.
Thank you very much. Our next question actually does go into budget and financing. So one of the substantial responsibilities of the school board is approving the yearly budget. What areas do you think we are currently underfunding? What areas of the budget would you cut in order to better support those areas that are in need of greater funding? So where are we missing it, and where could we be putting the money towards in the future?
Yeah, a budget is a reflection of somebody's priorities. So if you want to look at what they care about, you should look at their budgets. I think it's something to take seriously. And I want to be evaluating programs to make sure that they are achieving the outcomes that we created them for. And if they're not, then let's put that money towards something that is working well, or let's try something else that can achieve those outcomes. I'm going to need to talk with teachers and principals about what that is, and with the school division staff. I like for everything I do to be evidence-based. And so I want to have the data. I want to see the data on what's working and what's not, and then make our decisions from there, as well as talking to folks about their experiences with our programs. One of our biggest goals, our budget goals over the next few years, is going to be working with City Council to pay for the reconfiguration of our schools. And that is going to cost $100 million at least. You hear 75 million, but that's 75 million for Buford. And then the preschool center is 25 million. Like I said, preschool is a priority for me. I don't want us to pay for Buford and then have those preschool students in Walker and temporary facilities just sort of indefinitely. So we need to be thinking about how we're going to pay for that. And there are a couple of ways that we can raise additional funds that are needed. We can increase the real estate tax, and we can increase a sales tax. And I want to take a minute. This is actually a city issue, but I think it's really important that as a school board, we are thinking about how our policies affect our entire community. And when we increase the real estate tax, then we also need to make sure that we're lobbying for an expansion of the tax abatement program, because there are homeowners who own their home and it's appreciated in value, but their income doesn't support additional taxes. And I don't want them to be hurt by this reconfiguration that's supposed to help equity in our community. I say all of that just to recognize that it is very challenging, and I think we need to be honest about that. And I'm committed to doing the work to make reconfiguration happen in our budget.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Emily.
Right. So, I think it's really important to note that in the city of Charlottesville, our community has committed to having one of the highest per pupil expenditures, which is really important. And I think it shows that we are spending money beyond just the academics to provide for all of the wraparound services that our students need. The majority of the funding in our budget, the vast majority, is on our people, salaries and benefits. So in terms of thinking about programs, to cut or to reduce funding to, I think, an honest auditing of programs, and as Ms. Bennett said, really looking at the data to see, measurable outcomes and what is being successful or not is important. Right now, we do have the benefit of some additional federal funds to help us in the short term to try to right the ship and work to stabilize our school communities, on which so many depend not only for education, but for mental, social, emotional supports and physical well-being. And again, we need to use those funds to provide wraparound services to students and to be creative in the intervention programs. I'm excited to see the city council support for the reconfiguration plan. But, as mentioned, we are far from the finish line. This is a huge request, and it's going to be critical to show our commitment to, to the young people of our community that this is worthwhile. I think I'm uniquely positioned, both as an educator, but as a realtor as well, to advocate for the importance of this investment. I believe strongly that the quality of our schools matters, regardless of whether you have a student enrolled or not. So even if you don't have kids, you've chosen private schools, you're an empty nester, our public schools matter, and they matter for our property values, but more importantly, they matter because our community is built on the value of education, and our public schools should reflect that.
Thank you very much. So as I repeat the question, one of the substantial responsibilities of the school board is approving the yearly budget. What areas do you think we are currently underfunding? And what areas of the budget would you like to cut in order to better support those areas that need greater funding? Ms. Torres.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. So the intricacies of budget work is hard. Learning how to do this is hard. There's a lot of pieces to this. As far as the priorities of this board and our budget, as far as being reflective of that, I believe over 75% of our current budget goes to people and benefits. So we prioritize our people. Also, a big chunk of that, 83% of it, I believe, goes to programs, positions and instructional, or people in instructional positions. So again, prioritizing in that sense. What areas are we underfunding? I mean, I'd love to have more money that could go to our teachers and our staff and our employees. So that's always a priority. As far as what to cut, that's a tough question. I mean, again, I think we're in a unique position right now. We did use, some of our CARES funding to help us with this budget. And we knew that, and it was a tough decision, but we did that in partnering with the city and knowing that they were in a tough position as far as their revenues with COVID and what that was looking like. So we as a board are going to really have to work hard and take a look at this. As board chair, I took the initiative to schedule an extra and an initial budget work session early, because I knew and I know how important this is for us to look at, to get together and to really start to look at what we may have to do to make ends meet. But again, we need to trust the superintendent and the building leadership to evaluate programs and what's working, and again, to prioritize what we need for the kids. And what's going to work best for them. And as a board member, I will continue to do that as we work through our next budget.
Thank you. Mr. Morse.
We have kind of heard time and time again throughout this debate or this forum that the support of teachers advocating for themselves, of which I also support. But one of the things that how we can make sure that we are advocating for our teachers is in the budget, prioritize student-facing positions. And that is my main focus, to make sure that we properly fund and we properly pay the positions that are interfacing with our students day in and day out. We previously talked about the shortage, our staff shortages. That is one way that we can address that. We talked about retention. That is one way that we can address that. So that is the piece that I want to prioritize, the student-facing positions. The tough thing will be reconfiguration, and to make sure that we can pay for that, we have to continue to work through that process to make sure that we have not only Beaufort and Walker set up appropriately, but as we continue to renovate our buildings throughout the city, because they are aging, and we need to make sure that we have great environments for our students. And we need to also make sure that we have professional development with our teachers to best utilize those new spaces and best utilize the new practices within our curriculum, and to do that as a community. And I look forward to a tough budget process, but it's something that as a school board that we can do. And as a school board, we can continue to advocate to the General Assembly for additional funds to help us serve our children.
Thank you very much. Ms. Purrier?
Well, I think I am really positioned to talk about budget. This is not the first tough budget year that we have had since I've been on school board. Anyone that's familiar with budgets knows that we are always top heavy when you're looking at a budget with your salaries and benefits, but we're committed to doing what we should do, doing the right thing about our teachers, because our teachers are professionals and people need to view them as such. And we always do that. Each year that I've been on the board, we have requests from our principals and from our teachers, and they provide us with information that we need to look at the requests that they're making and why those requests are important. During the year, we have various reports that tell us how various programs are working. We have condensed some programs, we have realigned other programs, we have eliminated programs in order to bring in things that were going to better help not only our students, but our families and our teachers as well. And each and every year, that is what we do. We have an open door policy, and I'm always happy to speak to the teachers. And I'm so glad that the teachers and students have trusted me and hope they will continue to trust me, so that when we're doing our budget process, we are making those critical decisions to do what is important for our division. Yes, COVID gave us CARES money, and we've used that efficiently and effectively to hire support staff, to have bonuses, to do our mitigation strategies. And when those funds go away, those of us around the table will once again look at our budget critically, have the things that we need, adjust, eliminate, subtract, add, or divide in order that our division continue to be a leader in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you very much. Our next question will focus on reconfiguration. So what will you, as a new school board member, do to support the Walker/Beaufort reconfiguration, including supporting and obtaining funding, things like that? So what will you do as a new school board member to support the Walker-Beaufort reconfiguration? And I'll start off with you, Ms. Furrier.
Reconfiguration has been a long process, and thank you to our current city council for pushing it forward. And now the heavy lift is not only up to those of us on the school board, but for those of us in the community. We all value education, whether you have a child in school, or whether you've had children that have graduated from school, or whether you're an empty nester. Our education is important, and our reconfiguration indicates the importance of education, making Beaufort 21st century and beyond. Walker, our preschool center. We were the first division in the Commonwealth to have a 3-year-old program. And now we're going to work diligently, tirelessly to have a facility to represent what our 3- and 4-year-olds should have. And in doing that, we will look at ways to fund it through our general funds, through monies that have been given to us from our local municipality, i.e. City Council, lobbying and discussing with the General Assembly, the 1% tax. If we are required to raise real estate taxes, we will have education sessions explaining to everyone exactly what that means. And at the end of the day, we will have 2 stellar buildings to represent the stellar education that all of our children receive and deserve.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morse?
You know, we've talked about the budget to make sure that we work with City Council as school board members to make sure that we have the funds available and that we best utilize those funds to complete this project. But this conversation goes beyond just the facility upgrades, but also prioritizes how we approach and prioritize the model of education. And I spoke about this for the last question as well. As we have these new environments for our students, which we need, right? We need those new environments. At the same time, that is not the solution to the problems that our city faces. We need to continue to think about the models of instruction, having student voice and student choice within our curriculum, allowing our students to explore their interests, their passions, their values, their identity, and being able to apply those traits into the curriculum and in our community. It's just important for us to not forget that with new buildings, of which I am strongly for, that we also think about how to solve some of the academic issues for our students. I know that there are a lot of community members that are for reconfiguration, including myself, but we also know that our challenge is to educate our students in our city to make sure that we have strong leaders for the future that can advocate for themselves, advocate for their families, and create a stronger community for us as a whole.
Thank you very much. And yep, for the reconfiguration question, what will you, as a new school board member, do to support the Walker-Buford reconfiguration, including supporting and obtaining funding? Ms. Torres.
Thank you. Well, I think I've got to jump on this one. I mean, I think we've been doing the work. I think I've been doing the work. You know, I was on the working group with VMDO, which was leadership group working with city council leaders, city manager, and the architects and school leadership. I was on the community design team committee. So we've begun the work and we're going to continue it. We are where we are now. And it's really exciting that we've gotten to this point, and we need to keep the momentum going. And I think I have proven leadership in doing that, proven experience in doing that. I'm on the capital improvement project committee. So I get to sit and discuss with the city and facilities, the projects there. And that allows me the opportunity, and I will continue to look at those projects. And that's where we have an opportunity to look at funding options. Also, I think collaborating with philanthropists. I think there are some parents and groups in the community who are meeting, and I've been pulled into that to help organize and to reach out and look at options for funding. I've already reached out to our state legislators and looking at options for funding. And I think it's important that we continue as a community and as leaders to also reach out to national level funding, you know, as far as the Build Better and the infrastructure funding. Public schools are infrastructure, and we need to make sure that we are included in that funding. Our kids deserve this. You know, these new buildings will create the space and the opportunity for some of those wonderful instructional ideas that Mr. Morse has. We're going to have better air quality, better health, and a better instructional environment for our kids, and they deserve that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dooley?
Sure. So, I think like everyone, I'm really happy to see this project gaining momentum and moving forward. But we have to keep up the pressure and not just in the short term, but also for the years to come to make sure that the expansion of the preschool is also available in our community. As we work to see the reconfiguration plan to fruition, it's important for the board to continue to remind City Council and the community that this is not a one and done expenditure for education in our city. There are going to be needs that come after this. And we can't go, another 50 years before building another school. I've been an assistant principal in a middle school, and I've seen firsthand the challenges that this age and intense time of development brings. That's only made more chaotic and challenging by the number of transitions our current setup has. My husband teaches at Buford in a classroom in the D building, which across all design options is slated to be demolished, and I've heard a lot about it. The design renderings that BMDO has presented are exceptional, and I think are truly reflective of the possibilities that exist to create a learning space that's welcoming and an exciting place to learn for students at this pivotal age. As we talk about reconfiguration, similar to Mr. Morris, I want to return to the question about the achievement gap. And designing and creating a new school is not going to single-handedly improve student outcomes. I continue to believe that improving the rigor and instruction that's available to all students is the key to gains and achievement. That said, this new building allows for this type of instruction to readily occur. And so I'm excited to be part of a school system as the spouse of a teacher, the parent of a student, and hopefully a member of the school board to see that happen.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bennett?
So reconfiguration is an investment in our middle school grades. Of our middle schoolers, 66% are students of color, and almost half are from economically disadvantaged households. So I take it really seriously to be investing in them, and I support reconfiguration. But it's not going to be enough to just say that you support it. You're going to need community organizing experience and experience with legislative advocacy, because we are going to have to get City Council, General Assembly, and our Charlottesville neighbors to vote for a tax increase. And I have that kind of community organizing experience. Most recently, I led the community effort to build a playground at Walker Upper Elementary. And I did that because kids at the school requested a playground, and because I know how important being able to move their body during the day is to not only having fun, which I want for our students to have, but also social and emotional well-being. And playtime has actually been linked to improved academic outcomes. So I wanted to make this happen for them. And I worked with the community to raise money. And then I also engaged student feedback. The students actually get to vote on the playground equipment they wanted. And then I oversaw the construction of the playground as well. I am listed as a construction activity operator on the official city forms. The city said they were going to send me a hard hat, and they haven't yet. And I'm a little bit upset about that, but maybe it's in the mail. But I am glad that we were able to get that playground built for our students. And that's the same kind of organizing and advocacy and talking to folks in the community, getting them to support our students. I am able to leverage community resources for everyone in the community. This is what I do during my day job as COO at Strive for College. I close deals with companies, and those deals fund the programming that we offer students for free to help them get to college or find other pathways to living wage careers. So I have experience doing this. And like some of the other folks have said, reconfiguration cannot be our only answer to equity and a better experience in our middle schools. We have to continue talking with our community about what our middle schoolers need.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned social emotional learning, so that's gonna be our next topic. So what do you believe the Charlottesville City Schools' role is in supporting students' mental health and mental wellness? Again, what do you believe is the Charlottesville City Schools' role in supporting students' mental health and mental wellness?
This is a great topic, one I've advocated around a lot. In fact, the first time that I went before the school board, it was to advocate on a policy directly related to social and emotional well-being. And that was that recess was being taken away from students in school as punishment. And anybody who has ever talked to me about schools or knows me as a playground lady knows I really care about recess. Like I said, students need to be able to move their body during the day to even regulate their behavior and their emotions. So when students are able to move their bodies, then their brains and their bodies are better able to get along with their peers, pay attention in class, follow the rules, and to learn. And we know that across the US and in our own district that Black students are far more likely than their white peers to receive punishment in school. So even though we didn't have specific data on who was having recess taken away, it was a pretty safe bet, unfortunately, that Black students were being disproportionately affected. So I asked for the school board to put an end to this policy. And fortunately, with the support of other parents and community members, we did get that policy ended, or that practice ended. We did so through SHAB, the School Health Advisory Board that I mentioned. We updated the policy that was passed in 2017. So I think the school district has a really important role in that. And I would actually, if I can put a plug in here, SHAP desperately needs more parent members. So if you are a parent and social and emotional well-being is something that you care about, you have to show up for that. And SHAB would be a great way to do so. So I hope that I'll see some of the parents in our next SHAB meeting.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dooley.
Thank you. So, I'm just really grateful to live in a community that's already on the road to committing to these concepts. Again, I think, what we spend per student is high because we have committed to meeting the needs that go beyond academics. State resources for mental health were stretched thin before the pandemic, and we can see that the needs have only increased. As a member of the board, I would work to lobby our state and federal lawmakers to provide needed funds that would provide ongoing services. I, as a principal, was a student of safe brain theory, which is the idea that learning can occur when students are existing, in a state of trauma or fight or flight mode. We have to address students' mental well-being before we can even start to talk about academic instruction. But the issues of social and emotional learning and mental health are persistent throughout our population, not just students who are in a state of acute crisis. Some of you may have seen the graphic circulating on social media in the past few weeks that's highlighted the student's current grade relative to the last grade they were in a normal school year. And for me, that's something that I knew intellectually, but seeing it in print was really striking. For example, a current 7th grader, their last normal school year was in 5th grade. And I think that just highlights that students have really missed out on developmentally appropriate activities, and significant growth has been stunted. The muscles that students had, and quite frankly, all of us had in pre-pandemic days, have atrophied, and we're left feeling, pretty exhausted, which in my opinion is all the more reason that CCS is doing the right thing by committing to specific instruction on social emotional competencies to help our young people make sense of this world around them, and to build self-esteem, to be able to navigate a school setting that is vastly different than it was when they left in March of 2020.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder of our question, what do you believe is Charlottesville City Schools' role in supporting students' mental health and wellness? And I will go to Ms. Torres.
Thank you. So at least since 2015, Charlottesville City Schools has invested and implemented social emotional learning curriculum and programs. Pilot programs were started, like I said, in 2015. We had different programs, a SEAL classroom, pilot program at Greenbrier and at Clark in 2017. And fast forward to today, we have social emotional learning curriculum implemented from pre-K all the way through our 12th grade. So we have shown through budget and through investing in those types of curriculums and support how important it is to us. I think a concern for me, a little aside, was something that I saw, that over 140,000 students have lost a parent or a guardian in COVID. So, I mean, we are not only dealing with the academic issues and instructional issues, but also, again, the mental health and long-term trauma potentially that COVID is having, on our students and on this community. So again, we have shown that we prioritize this. And again, I want to emphasize that we also have shown that we prioritize, and I am committed to making sure that we have the mental health supports for our staff, all staff, for our principals, again, because they all need that. And so that is a priority of mine. And I think it's been a priority of Charlottesville City Schools. I'm here, I'm available, and I've shown that throughout this year, and have taken a lot of emails and a lot of calls surrounding different types of supports that people need. And I will continue to do that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morse?
As an educator, I can tell you our students are struggling as they transition back into school. And the role of school board is to make sure that we can alleviate that stress as best as possible, specifically when it comes to mental health and their overall wellness. It is our role to make sure that we have policies in place, just as the wellness policy that was recently passed, but also to make sure that we have our school counselors and mental health staff and continue to evaluate the appropriate number so that we have the appropriate staffing to have access. Our students have access to them, not only because of COVID, but also due to trauma. I can tell you, as a person that has gone to city schools, and after things have happened at home, growing up, there was domestic abuse in my household, and to be able to try to put things together and come back into the school and act like nothing happened. We have students that struggle all throughout this community. So, mental health, wellness, it's not just COVID, but we need to make sure that we're addressing underlying traumatic issues and being preventative, making sure that we are meeting with students regularly and making sure that we are trying to address their needs and grow those relationships. So as a school board, it's a priority, right, for anybody that comes into our buildings, that we help them through that process as best as we can. And that's a process that I'm looking forward to. As an educator, it's a process that I support every day. And it's something that we have to just keep thinking about and keep pushing on.
Thank you very much. Ms. Courier?
I'm really excited about this topic because of all that we have done in CCS. I was very proud when we did our budget to include trauma-informed classrooms, and that was well before COVID and any pandemic issues, because we recognized as a school division that there was something we needed to do. When my children attended the Charlottesville Public Schools, we had school counselors in every building, including elementary schools, so that our students had an open door policy to speak to people. We have our nurses in our building. Most recently, we have hired our social and emotional employees to help our students navigate this, especially since all of us have experienced some form of trauma or some relationship to COVID. We have a health and wellness policy that not only covers our students, but covers our staff. And I'm committed to ensuring that we have monies available for our staff to receive the mental health services that they need. When we're looking at wellness, how fortunate are we to have the city schoolyard garden? Our gardens in our schools have taught our students about health and wellness, whether it's through composting, growing flowers, growing fruits and vegetables, learning how to cook those things. These are all of things that are going to help us be better. And I'm excited because I worked diligently to start our mindfulness program at Walker and at Charlottesville High School. And we need to utilize all of these things, our gardens, our mindfulness training, our social and emotional employees, our trauma-informed classrooms, so that we all, whether we're a student, whether we're staff, or whether we're families, take advantage of our health and wellness in our division.
Thank you very much. So now we're on to our last two questions. So the second to last question, or the penultimate question, would be for new leadership. How might the arrival of the new superintendent, Dr. Gurley, influence your priorities as a school board member? So again, how might the arrival of a new superintendent, Dr. Gurley, influence your priorities as a school board member? And I will have you start us off, Ms. Purrier.
I'm very excited to have been a part of the process of hiring Dr. Gurley, our first African-American male superintendent for our division. He is young, he's excited, and he has a lot of creative ideas. And all of them, I think, will fit our school division. I was extremely impressed with his 100-day plan and how he talked about the importance of children and how we must listen to our children. Not only do we listen to our teachers and other administrators and adults in the division and respecting them, but hearing what our children have to say. Because believe it or not, children are people too. And they come in all shapes and sizes, and they're all ages, and they have bad days just like we do. And we need to respect them and listen to them. And on the other side, we must listen to our instructors. I think one of the most favorite things for me is not only listening to the students as they walk to and from school in my neighborhood every day, but the teachers that live around me and teachers that I see and telling me things that they need. And a lot of the things that they need and a lot of the things that I have heard are in Dr. Gurley's 100-day plan. So I'm very excited for us to respect each other, be calm, be patient, and listen. We must become effective listeners, hearing what people are saying, not answering the question before it's asked because you're outthinking the person that's asking the question, but being mindful and being in the moment and doing the things that we need that represent every learner every day, because that is what Charlottesville City Schools represents.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morse?
I look forward to the opportunity to work with Dr. Gurley. As school board members, it is our role to make sure that we look at the budget and to use that power of passing a budget in collaboration with the mission and the values and the plans of Dr. Gurley and our new superintendent, but also as elected leaders, is also our role to make sure that we hold our school division accountable, which also means Dr. Gurley. And that is no disrespect to him. That is just our role as elected leaders. So for me, it is to support his plan, but also as elected leaders and as a voice for this community and as a voice for the new generation that is coming up and the peers that I grew up with that went through the city schools. It is our role to make sure that we hold our school division accountable as well.
Thank you very much. And just as a reminder, the question is, how might the arrival of the new superintendent, Dr. Gurley, influence your priorities as a school board member? I will go to Ms. Torres.
Thank you. And now I have dogs in the background, so excuse me if you hear them. Again, I am thrilled to have Dr. Gurley here as superintendent of Charlottesville City Schools. This was a tremendous process and work through the summer and the spring to do this. None of the current board had been through the process of what it takes to bring a superintendent and hire a new superintendent, but that being the primary or one of the main reasons or jobs or roles of the school board. It was really a learning experience, being able to coordinate and listening sessions, the opportunity to do the community outreach, to make sure that students had an opportunity to provide input, families, teachers, community members across the board to have part of that, in what type of superintendent we wanted for Charlottesville. So I think we've done a great job. I'm very excited that he is here with us. As far as my priorities, and again, as far as the budget process, the budget process also allows student input, family input, staff input, community input as far as priorities. So we take that from him and from his team, and then we sit down and we work together to figure out what is needed for this division, what the priorities are for this division. Again, looking at what do our students need? So again, my priorities aren't changing. My priorities are really focused around what the students need, around equity, and what our teachers need. So it's a collaborative process, and no doubt he's going to be wonderful. And I look forward to working with him through this next budget.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Dooley.
Sure. So I was not part of the hiring process, but very much enjoyed meeting Dr. Gurley at a school board meeting last month. And I'm really excited to see him hit the ground running. I don't envy him that his first day on the job was presenting to City Council. He's coming into a pretty unique environment that Charlottesville offers to folks in leadership positions. So I think, one priority as a member of the board would be to really support him as he transitions into this new community, and helping him, understand, some of the things that he doesn't know. And then, as others have said, aside from actually hiring the superintendent, the other main role of the school board is to work to, create and establish a budget. And so I know that he is doing a lot of work right now to meet people and listen to students and teachers. It's been very fun to watch all of the pictures that he's taking, engaging with students. I saw one that he actually got to meet another student named Royal, which was very exciting for him, I think. I think to that end, as a board member, would also be spending time listening to him as he's making his first assessments of our division, and then working collaboratively to push those goals ahead, and then also providing the feedback and assessment of how work is going.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ms. Bennett.
Yeah, so as COO of Strive, I know that the most important part of our organization is our people, and I have a buck stops here mentality where when I'm working with my staff, if something isn't going well, I look at myself first. Did I not provide my staff with what they need to get the job that we asked them to do? And it seems like Dr. Gurley has that mentality too. So I'm really excited about the possibility of being able to work with him to build a team that feels supported within our school district. I am also a process person. I really like setting out goals, and so then we can evaluate ourselves against those goals. So I really loved his 100-day plan because it has boxes where we can check off if we met the goals that he set forth to achieve during these 100 days. So I really appreciate that about him. It's a way to keep ourselves honest and keep ourselves accountable. There is a real opportunity both in having a new superintendent, but also after the pandemic, which has been so awful, but it is a chance to repair and rebuild. And I think that we can build back better than it was before. I don't want to return to normal or what life was like before. I think that this has, while it has exacerbated some inequities in our community, it has also given us a chance to think differently about how we do school and finding things that are more personalized for each student and what works for each student. I am also interested as a school board member, there are some limitations to what we can do because we are governed by a General Assembly and we have to get money from City Council. And I would love to talk with Dr. Gurley about where we can maybe push for some changes. Some other folks I know, other candidates also support moving away from standardized testing. I know that we're required to do these, but where can we make some movement and do what's best for our students. There are some gifted things that we are required by the state to identify students as gifted. We've made some progress in making that serve our students, but where are some things where we can push and come up with some policies that are best for our students? So I look forward to working with him on that.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, and so now we are on to our last question. It's more of just an opportunity for you all to give your closing statements. If you need to think of it as a question, I like to think of it as the why you and why now. So we can start off with Ms. Bennett when you're ready.
So I like to say that I'm running for school board because justice is a community event. And I do think about school decisions in terms of justice for our kids. And justice for kids is them having what they need to grow strong and healthy and prepared for great futures. And the community part is that we have to show up for that. We have to show up for our children. And showing up means that we are making space for families who have historically been excluded from decision-making in our district. It means that we are following the lead of people of color and working to achieve equity. And it means that we're taking seriously how our students feel at school, that they feel safe and welcomed and respected, and that they have what they need to learn. And that's why I decided to run, because I felt that that was the next step that I could take to show up for my community, and that it would be another tool in my tool belt for advocating for our kids. I am a working mom. I work full time with my job at Strive, and my husband, Mike, lives and works in Baltimore during the week. He got a job there a couple of years ago, and we love our Charlottesville community so much that we decided to stay. But it is hard parenting during the week by myself. And there have been times over the past few months that I've asked myself, am I sure that this is the right time for me to be running? And I am the only person who is running who currently has a child in the school system and has for a while. And of our 7 current school board members, only 2 now have students in our school district. And I do think that we need another parent on the school board. If I'm elected, I will bring the same grit and persistence that changed the recess policy to make sure all kids had their recess, that built the Walker playground. I'll bring that to the board. And to all of the parents, I would love to have your vote so that I can bring that experience to work for you and your children as a school board member.
Fantastic, thank you. Ms. Dooley?
Sure. So I'm running because, I believe that my experience in education will bring an important and missing voice to the board. I think generally boards benefit from a vast, array of experiences. And I'm a graduate of the Curry School at UVA. I was a teacher in Albemarle County for 6 years before transitioning out of the classroom, serving as an assistant principal in a middle school and then the principal of a primary school. I've got varied vested interests in our school system. My son is 4 and will start at Burnley Moran as a kindergartner next fall. And as I mentioned earlier, my husband is a social studies teacher at Buford. My depth of understanding and level of expertise that I have as a virtue of my time working as an educator will allow me to hit the ground running to address the challenges that are facing our community. My experience has shown me that the pursuit of equity in our schools can't be a separate agenda item, but instead has to permeate every decision that we make. I have experience building a master schedule to analyze what courses result in tracking and grouping students. I've been involved in data review meetings and have worked to implement norm setting where biases and assumptions about students are challenged. I've created and supported the implementation of literacy intervention programs that engage caretakers and others in the community to promote reading skills. I've supported curriculum rewrites that are reflective of our history and inclusive of our population. And I've worked to change assessments to be performance-based and to reflect rigor and critical thinking for all students. I believe that in order to accomplish this work, we must engage teachers and include them in the policymaking process. And I believe my experience as a teacher and as a leader of teachers will help me ground the policymaking decisions of the board in the realities of schools. We have significant challenges facing our city, but really great opportunities as well to continue to lead in our efforts to provide a world-class education for all students.
Thank you very much. Ms. Torres?
Thank you. First, I want to offer my sincere thank you to the Black Parent Association, the Joint PTO, to you, Daniel, for having this forum this evening. honestly, I can't remember if I shared this, but I want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about my journey as a parent. I am a single parent, a parent of an awesome kid, a kid unique and wonderful, like every kid, but a kid who needed something more and something different. Realizing she needed more and different thrust me into a level of advocating and advocacy years ago when she entered public schools. At times it felt like it was a battle. It wasn't easy, and I often felt like I was alone, but she never gave up. And she inspired me to keep showing up. And this was my first experience and a defining lived moment and realization of what equity was about. Fast forward a few years, I continued showing up, and it became clear to me that as hard and as bumpy as this process was at times, we were kind of lucky because she ultimately did get accommodations and supports. But then I quickly started to think about, what about the other kids? What about the other parents? Did they know to keep pushing, asking questions? Were they able to make the meetings that they needed to make? This is why I ran for school board 4 years ago. It was about equity then, and it's about equity now. Every policy we've passed, every decision I've made has been student and equity focused. As a school board chair this year, I've demonstrated leadership and commitment to every student, parent, and staff member as we've prepared to return to school. I am accountable. I've led the school board through the process of our superintendent search. I've been an active lead throughout the reconfiguration process this summer. I'll still keep showing up. I am doing the work. I appreciate each and every one of you. And again, thank you for this opportunity, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
I was born and raised in this city. I was born and raised in this city. As a student that has gone through Charlottesville City Schools, I have lived some of the disparities that we've spoken about this evening. From guidance counselors telling me I wasn't ready to take advanced courses in high school, even though I had successfully completed honors classes at Burley Middle School. Having my desk in a small hallway that led into an overcrowded classroom, to realizing many of my friends, neighbors, and teammates were not prepared to simply compete for jobs because we weren't receiving the same rigorous instruction as other students within the same school building. My negative experiences continually motivate me to innovate in education and improve student experience. Every day in the classroom, I work to help students explore, solve problems, and find their own voice to become the next generation of leaders. In this city, we have a great opportunity to push education forward, the opportunity to develop instructional practices that are a model for our nation, the opportunity to increase student voice and student choice by facilitating student exploration, tapping into their interests, values, and identity in order for our students to personally connect with academic standards we teach them, and applying those standards while developing solutions for our community. As an award-winning active educator, I am the best school board candidate to proactively push education forward and build a model of education that bakes in equity, social emotional learning, and student voice. You can go to votedonmorris.com to help with my campaign, but what I really need is your vote on Election Day.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Ms. Burrier.
Leader, educator, advocate, honest. Those are some of the adjectives that describe me, who I am, who I have been, and who I will continue to be if you re-elect me to the Charlottesville School Board. Why me? Why now? Several years ago, when there were issues in our school division, a group of students came to me and said, "Ms. P, what's wrong with us? Why does everybody talk about us? As if we're not here. There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter the name of the street or the school, because you are fine. You have value, you have worth, and you have something to contribute. And that's why I ran. And that's why I'm running again, because everyone needs a voice. In my day job, that is what I do. I advocate for children here in Charlottesville and the Central Virginia community. My children are products of the Charlottesville City Schools, and I am proud of that. I have seen this school division grow from nothing to greatness. Our achievements are many. Yes, we have work to do. We are not shying away from the hard work. Our school board, with my leadership and others, continues to do the hard work, continues to do the heavy lifting. And I want to continue to do the hard work. I am energized, I'm fired up and ready to go, because every day, every learner, everyone is the CCS family. And I would appreciate your vote November 2nd. Thank you.
Well, just thank you all. Those of you that have joined us, thank you all to our candidates that are here, that are willing and ready to put themselves on the line to make Charlottesville a greater place. So I thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to the Black Association, the Black Parents Association, as well as the Joint PTO. This has been incredible, and I just hope you all have a wonderful night.